Hello again, Year 5, more from The Ice Monster by David Walliams. And we're at chapter 65, Hard Rain. The old soldiers and the young sailors all worked together to untangle the mammoth from the net. As soon as the captain of HMS Argonaut had hauled 2 of his sailors out of the North Sea, he stepped on board the HMS Victory to help. "I'm so sorry this has happened," said the captain. Elsie put her hands over the wound in Willie's chest to stop the flow of blood. "Why did you shoot her?" she cried. "Why?" There was no answer. "Somebody do something," she begged. Dotty put her ear to the animal's mouth. "I can't hear her breathing. I'm so sorry, Elsie. I know you loved her, and she loved you. But this is the end of the story." "No!" yelled Elsie. Boom! Thunder rolled across the sea. Ahead, black clouds were swirling. A storm was coming. "Sail into the storm," ordered Elsie. The Admiral looked aghast. "No, it would not. It would be the end of us all. It's the only way we can save her." "By sailing into a storm?" demanded the Admiral. "We used lightning to restart her heart before. Maybe we can do it again." Dotty rushed over to where Elsie was trying to stop the flow of blood. "Let me take over," she said. The lady pushed the end of her mop right into the wound, and the flow of blood slowed. "We can tow you into the storm," offered the captain of the Argonaut. "No," replied the Admiral. "It's too dangerous. You young sailors have got your whole lives ahead of you." He turned to the pensioners. "Men, are you all with me?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "Good luck," said the captain, and he and the Admiral saluted each other. "We will make sure Queen Victoria is told all about your bravery." The captain led the men back on board the Argonaut as the Admiral called out his orders. "Set course for the storm!" The men went to work, and soon HMS Victory was flying into the darkness ahead. "Elsie," began Dotty, "do you know what you're doing? We don't have a balloon or metal wire or anything." "I know," the girl choked, fighting back a river of tears, "but there must be a way." Her eyes searched the deck of the Victory. At the bow she spotted something. "See that metal chain, Titch?" "Yes," replied the old soldier. "That's for dropping the anchor. Put the anchor right next to Willie's heart, and then pass me the end of the chain." "Right-ho!" Titch scuttled over to the bow, and with the help of his fellow pensioners, he dragged the anchor and chain over to where the mammoth was lying. Elsie took the end of the chain and wrapped it round her wrist. Then she placed a cutlass between her teeth like a pirate, and with her monkey feet began climbing the rigging. "Where do you think you're going?" asked Dotty. "The Crow's Nest, of course," Elsie replied, her speech hard to understand thanks to the cutlass in her mouth. As the ship crashed up and down on the angry waves, thrum, 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 Elsie climbed up and up and up. Once at the top, she clambered into the Crow's Nest and looked straight ahead into the storm. "Come on," she whispered to the sky. "Give me everything you've got." All the way up there at the tallest point of the Victory, the rolling of the ship in the waves became exaggerated. Elsie found herself holding on for dear life. She looked down to see the Admiral at the wheel, holding on tightly so the waves didn't hurl him into the sea. Hard rain was flying into the girl's eyes. It was a struggle to keep them open. Soon she was soaked to the skin. The wind wound round her and the clouds skimmed her hair. "Straight ahead, Admiral," she ordered. "Aye, aye, Captain Elsie," he called back up. Boom! Thunder rumbled across the sky. "Come on, Lightning," the girl whispered. "I know you're in there somewhere." As if on cue, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky. Crazzle! Are you sure you know what you're doing?" called up Dotty. "No, this is madness." "Good madness or bad madness?" "Good, I hope." Elsie lifted the cutlass high into the air. "But the lightning, Elsie, it could kill you," shouted Dotty. "If it does, promise you'll look after Woolly for me. Make sure she gets to the North Pole. Please." "Don't do this." "Why?" "I love you, Elsie. You're like a grandma to me." "I think you mean granddaughter, Dotty. And I love you too, but I have to save my friend. Promise you'll look after her." "I promise." A bolt of lightning hit the front sail and it burst into flames. Boom! "Fire on board!" shouted the Admiral as the men struggled to put it out. "Nearly," whispered Elsie. She stretched her arm as high as it would go and closed her eyes. "Come on!" she shouted. A bolt of lightning struck the tip of the cutlass. "Ah!" cried Elsie as the electricity sizzled through her. Chapter 66. A Watery Grave. The bolt of lightning passed through the girl and shot down the metal chain. The anchor had been pushed against the lifeless creature's chest, and now it delivered a thump of electricity to Woolly's heart. Dumph! Elsie slumped to her knees at the highest point of the ship, and the mammoth's legs twitched. One eye opened, then another. "She's alive!" shouted Dotty. "Do you hear me, Elsie? Elsie!" As thunder and lightning boomed around them, Dotty and Titch looked up the crow's nest. "No!" screamed Dotty when she saw the girl slumped over the side, lifeless. "You look after Woolly," cried Titch as he began climbing up the rigging. The boat was now swinging wildly from side to side, and the higher he scrabbled, the more he felt he was going to be tossed into the watery grave. Eventually he reached the crow's nest. Elsie was now lying motionless on the floor. "Elsie! Elsie!" he cried, but there was no response. Titch scooped her up in his arms and put her over his shoulder. Then he made the hazardous climb down the rigging and laid her out on the deck of the ship. Elsie's face was blackened, and despite the rain, her hair and clothes were smoking. It seemed that the electric bolt which had given the mammoth life had taken life away from the girl. On seeing her friend laid out like this, Woolly scrambled over to her. First the mammoth tried to rock her friend awake with her foot. "Who?" Elsie just flopped from side to side. Next she licked the girl's face with her tongue. "Who?" A white streak appeared on her skin. Dotty burst into floods of tears and held Elsie's lifeless body close to hers. "No, no, please." Titch put his arms around her. "I think she's left us." Chapter 67, Heads Bowed. The pensioners stood around the body with their heads bowed and their hats held close to their chests. All was quiet and still on the deck of the Victory. However, the mammoth was not giving up on her friend. "Who?" To everyone's surprise, Woolly placed her trunk over the girl's nose and mouth and blew air into her. "What's the beast doing?" said the Admiral as he tried to keep steering the Victory through the storm. "I think she's trying to blow air into Elsie," replied Dotty. "Her chest is moving up and down," exclaimed Titch. "Thank the good Lord for his mercy," cried out Dotty. "She's alive!" Elsie's eyes opened. A huge, wet, furry trunk was staring back at her. At first she didn't know where she was, or even who she was. But as soon as she realised who was looming over her, she took the trunk in her hands and kissed it. "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, Woolly. I love you." The mammoth wrapped her trunk around the girl and pulled her close for a cuddle. "Hurrah!" cried the old soldiers. This was all very well and good, gentlemen, and lady, and girl, and, of course, mammoth, and so on and so forth, began the Admiral. "But can I politely remind you that we are still sailing through the heart of a storm? It's going to take every last man, every last person, and prehistoric animal for us to survive this. Back to work at once." Part 3, The North Pole. Chapter 68, Battered and Bruised. Battered and bruised, HMS Victory eventually sailed into calmer waters. An icy wind blew across the ship. They were moving closer and closer to the North Pole. A shout came down from the crow's nest. "Iceberg ahoy!" Elsie whispered into the mammoth's ear. "We're getting close, Woolly." The mammoth nodded her head up and down and called out, "Who?" Very close. The Admiral expertly navigated HMS Victory through the maze of ice. "Land ahoy!" came another shout from above. "Who?" hooted Woolly. Somehow she knew she was going home. The ship stopped alongside the edge of the ice, causing a huddle of walruses to scatter into the water. Plop, plop, plop. After weeks at sea, the mammoth was eager to step out onto solid ice. Her entire body was swaying with excitement. "Not long now, Woolly," said Elsie. As soon as it was safe, she led her friend down the gangplank and onto the ice. Immediately the mammoth rolled onto her back, rubbing herself on the snow. Elsie thought it looked like fun, so joined in too. She even fashioned a snowball, which she lobbed at Woolly. Biff! In return, the mammoth hoovered up some snow with her trunk and sprayed it on the girl. Dotty and Titch looked on from the deck of the Victory like proud grandparents. When Elsie and Woolly both began to tire, the girl decided it was time to say goodbye. She gave her friend the biggest cuddle she could. "I'm going to miss you so much," she whispered into the mammoth's ear. Woolly shook her head. Whatever did the animal mean? She reached out her trunk and took the girl by the hand and began tugging her along. Willie wants me to go with her, Elsie called out to those on the ship. But where? Chapter 69. Some Kind of Machine. We're coming too, exclaimed Dotty, dragging Titch by the hand. Do we have to? I'm freezing, he moaned. Come on! The lady dragged her beloved off the ship and onto the ice. Wait there, please, Dotty called back to the Admiral. We were going to go straight back to London, replied the Admiral sarcastically, but now you ask, we'll wait. Thank you kindly, said the lady. Willie led her 3 friends across the ice. Soon they had lost sight of the Victory. We'll have to try and remember which way we came, remarked Titch. Yes, turn left at that mound of snow, replied Dotty unhelpfully. Underneath the ice there was the sound of something whirring. Rrrr. It stopped Willie in her tracks. Who? She cried softly, clearly spooked. What's that? Asked Elsie. What's what? Asked Dotty. That sound, replied the girl. She put her ear down to the ice. Maybe it's a killer whale, suggested Titch. Willie shook her head. No, replied the girl, this is some kind of machine. All 4 stood still and silent. Suddenly there was the deafening noise of something grinding through the ice. Drrrr. Ahead of them, a metal nose burst out. Smash! Who? Screamed Willie. What's that? Gasped Elsie. It's one of them submarines, replied Titch. What's it doing here? Asked Elsie. And who's going to sweep up all the ice? Remarked Dotty. The underwater craft forced its way up to the surface and bobbed on the sea for a moment. Shall we make a run for it? Suggested Elsie. No, let's stand our ground, replied Titch. My hero, said Dotty. A hatch opened on top of the submarine and a pith helmet emerged, followed by a gnarled face, which seemed to have been burned in an explosion. Well, 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 fancy meeting you here, snarled the lady. It was Lady Buckshot. She was chomping on a cigar and wielding a shotgun. Who? Cried Willie. Yes, how peculiar, replied Dotty. Maybe we should have made a run for it, said Titch. Thought you could kill me off, did you? Called out the big game hunter as she stepped down from her submarine onto the ice. Thought your little stunt with Tower Bridge was clever, did you? Mused Dotty. Probably not saying the right thing here, but yes, I did, actually. Silence! You asked the question. It was a rhetorical question. What's that? You don't know what a rhetorical question is? No. Silence! That was also a rhetorical question. We're going round in circles now. Right, I'll shoot you first. Elsie stepped in front of Dotty. Never, said the girl. Titch stepped in front of Elsie. Never, he said. Then Willie swept them both aside with her trunk. Who? She hooted at the hunter. I'll just stay here at the back if that's all right with everyone, announced Dotty. Oh, for goodness sake, thundered Buckshot, spitting out her cigar and pointing her shotgun at each of them in turn. I will kill you all. Chapter 70. Behind You. Buckshot clicked her shotgun. Click! Don't you fools see how good all your heads will look on my wall, she called out. I'd rather like my head attached to my body, Elsie called back, and so does Willie. Who? The mammoth nodded in agreement. Willie? Mocked Buckshot. The monster has a name? She's not a monster, she's a mammoth, said Dotty. A what? Asked Buckshot. A mammoth. Are you deaf? It'll take too long to explain, said Elsie. Fine, I don't have the time anyway. Prepare to die. Titch put his hand up in the air. Excuse me, lady. What now? There's a polar bear behind you, he lied. No, there isn't, said Dotty. Shut up, he hissed. Yes, there is, Elsie continued the lie. A really big one. I'm not falling for that old chestnut, thundered Buckshot. Who? Hooted Willie, pointing with her trunk at the spot where this imaginary bear might be. Oh, I get it, said Dotty. There's a really big brown bear. White bear, hissed Titch. White bear behind you. It would look great on your wall, added Elsie. Behind her, she could sense the mammoth was straining. What are you doing, Willie? Whispered Elsie. The mammoth had shut her eyes tight in concentration. Finally it came. A bottom burp. A bottom burp that sounded exactly like the growl of a bear. The noise made Buckshot turn round and look. It gave the gang of 4 just enough time to rush at her. Titch rugby tackled her and she fell to the ice. Thump! Ah! Dotty sat on her so she was trapped. Get off me, you peasant! Next, Elsie snatched the shotgun from her and threw it as far away as she could so it landed on deep snow. "Give me that back!" Last, Willie lolloped forward and with her trunk grabbed the lady by her ankle. "What are you doing, you beast?" Guessing what was to come, Elsie helped Dotty off Buckshot. Then Willie dangled her would-be killer in the air. "Help!" she cried. "Not on your Nellie," said Dotty. The mammoth lifted the hunter high in the air and began swinging her in circles. "Ah!" yelled Buckshot. The circles became faster and faster. Whir. Soon Buckshot became nothing more than a blur. "Ah!" "Now let go," said Elsie. The mammoth did what she was told. "No!" cried Buckshot as she spun through the air like a boomerang. Whiz! Unlike a boomerang, she didn't come back. Buckshot flew across the Arctic before landing far out of sight with a thud. "Thank you, Mammoth," said Dotty. "That woman was beginning to get on my nerves." We leave it there for today.